Coming to you from the not-for-profit Mainframe Studios at 900 Keogh Way in downtown Des Moines, this is 900 Views, a podcast about building community through the arts as we build an arts community. And today, our guest has spent years working on that arts and community building piece. As an actor, performer, musician, all-around creative in his own right, and as he's become perhaps most known in the area as host and producer of Culture Buzz, a weekly arts and culture radio program on KFMG 98.9 FM, and that radio station is now housed at Mainframe. John Busbee also publishes a highly informative online newsletter that keeps readers current on the arts and culture scene. I'm currently with him in the KFMG studios, and John has just launched new services and an expanded presence for Culture Buzz. So let's just start with the real obvious thing, John. What's new with Culture Buzz?
Oh, my gosh. I kind of stepped off the cliff, so to speak, and said, if I'm going to learn how to swim, I'm just going to jump in the river. The Culture Buzz really needed a larger umbrella under which to operate, and so that's why it has transitioned into a nonprofit. The show is still kind of the anchor for what I do, the weekly 2-hour show. It's informative, it connects. The Culture Buzz, if you want to look at one word that really tells what the Culture Buzz does, is a conduit. The idea is to connect people with their community and what's going on in the community when it comes to arts and culture, and I take a broad sweep of the cultural brush.
Yeah, you sure do. Now, your emphasis, though, has tended to be in theater, which is where your background is, and you're doing something that we've talked about over and over and over again on this program, that there's just a lack of critique and criticism in our community around the arts, and you're kind of starting to fill that theatrical critique void.
Well, again, there's always a leap of faith when anyone is involved with something they're passionate about. My leap of faith moment came at the beginning of this theater season in 2019 to 2020. And I said to myself, and I made the pledge to all the theater companies, the local theater companies, that I would professionally review each and every one of their productions that qualified under the Chloris Awards parameters, which means at least 3 performances open to the public, produced locally. That's a commitment to review about 50 shows this season.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. How's that gone for you from your perspective?
It's exhausting. It's challenging at times, and I love every minute of it because it is starting to unify the community, knowing that there is a resource where they can go and get a professionally written review. It's only about 500-600 words long, so it's not a huge thing, that gives them some insights, not only about the productions that just opened, but also about the theater scene here. My goal, opening weekend, I will review the show so that by that Monday after opening weekend, they will have a review out there. So for 2, 3, and 4 week runs, they've got a review out there they can use as they see fit.
Now, in a community our size, when you go to a show and it's not as up to snuff as you wish it were, how does that play for you to have participated in that kind of a critique, and what kind of feedback are you getting from that?
Well, let's just say experience over the years has taught me to maybe critique some things by omission rather than using a sledgehammer. You will not find this kind of eviscerating New York City style critiquing that some people think, oh my God, they're a critic. I've been on the stage. I've done over 150 shows over my career. I've kind of faded out of the performing aspect, but I wanted to continue with that kind of experience in a giving way. So there will be times where I will make comments that simply say, it will imply that they know and I know that this wasn't quite up to snuff. Does it mean you should simply say, oh, I will never go there again? No. Why? Because with your family, with your marriage, whatever, you're not going to have 100% on everything. The idea is to keep giving chances, keep being involved, being engaged, develop a relationship so you can watch some of these performers grow. You'd be amazed at how many talented performers have gone from the stages here in Des Moines to stages in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, down in Texas, things like that. It's amazing. You get to see kind of those budding moments here.
Now, this is kind of a wacky question. What's the difference between arts and culture?
It's all kind of like muddying paints up. I don't consider they overflow. I mean, this is more soup than salad. So, and you mix up a good soup, and sometimes you see a bunch of good carrots. Sometimes you see other things. But arts and culture, they're such general terms. I think they're all encompassing. You talk to arts with one person, that's what they're going to say. You talk to another person, it's going to be completely different. Culture I kind of like to use because when I think of arts has to overlap with the culture of our community. It has to overlap with the diversity in a community. And I'm not talking about just ethnicity. I'm talking about the diversity of business, about conservative to liberal, about different things like that, ages, things like that. That's what culture is about. And the idea is arts and culture is the one way I think we can bridge all the different variants that are in our community. It all comes back. One of the things that I remember from a talk about 10 years ago, an artist said, creativity is the capital of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. I love that phrase because, one, it employs the word capital in that, which gets business people, their ears perk up there. But the idea is true. Creativity is the one thing that's going to carry us forward because manufacturing isn't going to do it. And so we have to be creative.
So how are we doing based on your years of experience in this community, particularly with, I understand, a theatrical focus, but you do use a broad brush when you talk about arts and culture. What's our status?
Oh, I think Des Moines has really blossomed over the last 15 years or so. I've been in this community for over 40 years, so I've watched quite an evolution happen. Des Moines has a lot of quality aspects that, quite honestly, other communities, larger and smaller, have as well. We've got an incredible symphony. We've got a ballet. We've got an art museum. These are all cornerstones of our cultural well-being, our cultural community, our cultural quotient. We've got to have those. We've got to support those and respect those. And by and large, those major organizations are supported very well. I would like to see more of a kind of a little slicing off of one edge, say up to 5% for some innovative creativity. Get some entrepreneurial artists and creators out there and find ways to connect them with some microfunding for projects. Now, I'm not talking about someone who says, yeah, I got a great idea, give me $5,000. No, I'm talking about let it be properly vetted. If that artist has a good idea, have them meet with some of the community leaders who have that same kind of investment in our community and work a plan out so that they can come up with, okay, if we're going to invest $5,000, here's what we want to see happen. Well, I love your core idea, but after that has started, I want that to prime the pump. I don't want to be one feast and that's it.
Yeah, so with this kind of micro-funding idea, do you have examples of where you've seen that elsewhere, or is that something that just came out of John Busbee's bubble?
There's nothing that comes out of my bubble. I would say, if anything, John Busbee's more like the BASF of the arts and culture world, where I don't create something, I just try to make it better.
So where have you seen that concept work, or how do you envision it actually really unfolding or happening here?
It's unfortunate because it's done on a state level, so it just happens very sporadically, and it's not community-focused. The Iowa Arts Council and Department of Cultural Affairs do some great things with specific funds. I think of a project called The Niche that Ian Miller did a few years ago. It blossomed into more than just a creative product. It became kind of a movement and presentation format that he was able to take into schools and educational settings and community settings and encourage more literacy, more engagement, more creative thinking. That's just one of many. that's probably a really good one because it broaches writing, performance, bookmaking, craft, fine craft work, and leather-bound books, hand-printed pages. It's just, those are the kind of things that we need more of. Also, what's neat in this community, and I've seen happen, and this is more anecdotal, I can't think of specific examples, but I look at what can happen here. This community is blessed with a lot of young professionals that have the pockets deep enough to do some micro patronage of artists where they can simply say, I've been watching you and I like what you're doing. Here's a project I have. They get together and they underwrite this artist to create one thing that happens, and that attracts other people to what is happening.
How do we prime the pump for that sort of thing? How do we get that level of engagement of the community? We're still struggling, I think, sometimes to fill houses on good shows that you may have reviewed and told us they're great, and we're still not necessarily even filling those small theaters. So how do we kind of do that basic thing and then take it to this next kind of level that you're talking about?
Well, my theme has become, over the last 2 years especially, is I'm encouraging people to be cultural adventurers. You've got to be a cultural adventurer. I'm not talking about taking silly risks, the Darwinism type thing. No.
We're not going to launch rockets into moons.
But, if I'm talking with someone who says, I really like these big truck races here, I'll listen to them. I'll go to a big truck race for him, which isn't my real cup of tea, but I want him to go to a theater event with me, and I want us to talk about it afterwards. It can be over a cup of coffee or it could be over a beer, but I want that kind of, that weren't too bad.
Have you actually had that kind of experience?
No, I'm still reaching. I may wait to the state fair for that moment.
But you're saying make the trade, make the exchange.
Make the exchange.
Yeah, start talking about it. So some of these folks who stay focused perhaps on our sporting events, and this is in no way a denigration of those sporting events, but perhaps we can go to the sporting event and then say, in exchange, come with me to Pyramid Theater Company.
Yes, I mean, I'm an avid sports fan. I love sports. And in college, one of my best theater instructors was an avid Hawkeye wrestling fan, and he would be bounding around the stage in rehearsals. But the idea is to open your eyes more, because if anyone who hears this, if you're thinking about the people that, let's say, inspire you in smaller ways, not, he lost both legs and still climbed Mount Everest, that kind of thing, that's inspiration I can't understand. But there are people that have done things on smaller levels that I can identify with. Find those inspirations and find ways you can step out of, call it your comfort zone if you want to, but look at it as an adventure. I mean, something that excites, and you're taking a little bit. There is something just wonderfully, there's a little visceral flare-up that happens when you do something that is a little bit different. You're pushing yourself a little bit more. That's what people need to do.
So when we think about the phrase community building and the arts, those two go hand in hand. And I've heard you talk about the critique piece that you do as being sort of unifying for that aspect of the art scene. Where's the community building and the arts that gets even more holistic, breaks beyond theatrical boundaries and covers the visual arts, the theatrical arts, the musical arts? It goes on and on and on, that kind of list.
A lot of that, we've got a great corporate infrastructure here in Greater Des Moines. And I know that they bring in a lot of professionals that can talk the number crunching and team building and all these other things. Bring in some creatives as well to talk about things. If you have a team, a kind of a senior management team that is looking for a different kind of stimulation, invest in 20 tickets to Iowa Stage Theater Company or the Des Moines Playhouse, and go to that event, and then have a representative from that company come and meet with that group in their own environment over coffee and just chat for half an hour. Just what it's about. Because what they'll find out is that, if I start thinking about it, the patrons that are going there, a lot of times they're also adding going out for drinks or a dinner or something like that. Some of these companies have people coming in from out of town. They're even staying overnight. What can I say? We have this 800-pound cultural gorilla, the Des Moines Performing Arts Organization, which is internationally renowned for what it has been doing. And they are a blessing to our community. And they really kind of inspire, I think, everyone to kind of work a little harder to make things happen. So that's just small risk. It's nothing big.
Are we top tier as an art scene in the Midwest?
No, I'm never going to say we're top tier, because if we're not always striving for something better, then we can't rest on any laurels whatsoever. We've got to keep looking, rebranding, reworking, finding out what the trends are. But it's a matter of awareness. And again, if you're a cultural adventurer, if you consider yourself a cultural adventurer, you're seeing how some of those things cross over. All of a sudden, you're not standing in one silo. You're putting little bridges between those silos, and you're kind of getting different perspectives. You kind of blend those all together. Then you have a great perspective that other people don't have. So quite honestly, being culturally engaged, you have an advantage over other people that maybe are your competition.
What's the role of Mainframe in all of this, in the community building and the arts scene and arts community building?
Oh, Mainframe Studios, I think, is just beginning to be recognized for what it means, not just for the Greater Des Moines community in central Iowa, but for Iowa and the nation, because here's a model that's being developed in the most unlikely of places. It's in the middle of Iowa. And so when people think of this kind of a concept, they think of, Boston, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. But here it is, it's working here. And that's why these First Fridays are just priceless. And I didn't mean to say it that way, but yeah, there's no cost to the public to come here. It's priceless. It's great. You can come in and see what is happening. We have national and international artists here in this building. We have people that have worked for the best comic book illustrators in the world and publications. We have people who have designed iconic album covers here. We have professional hot glass workers, glass blowers, that have a little stadium seating area set up so you can watch them work, and they'll explain it to you. There's just incredible things here. So it really becomes this buzzing atmosphere here where there's a palpable presence for what is happening here. And to try and put it into words doesn't do it justice, because my tastes are different than your tastes, Pat. They're different than someone else's tastes. Come down here. You have one of the greatest cultural smorgasbords you could ever feast on.
Now, before we go, I've just got to touch on Culture Buzz then again, because you have, as you said, fashioned it now into a 501c3, a not-for-profit, because you needed a bigger umbrella.
Yep.
So what are we going to be seeing from Culture Buzz, seeing or hearing from Culture Buzz that we haven't been seeing and hearing before?
Well, the first thing that will happen is the website was softly launched a couple of months ago. It is active now. Go to www.theculturebuzz.com. What you will find there is you will find access to all the reviews since the beginning of the 2019-2020 theater season here, plus a few bonus reviews. You will also find a large library of my podcasts, of interviews I've done with artists, with authors, with local cultural icons, things like that. So, if you want to take about a 15-minute listen, bang, there you are. Just go ahead and listen to it. What I need you to do is, if you connect with Culture Buzz and you like what you see, share it with other people. I need to get the word out there, because it does take a lot of energy and commitment, not just on my part, but I have other professional writers that are helping out with this process so that we can continue doing something that this community has not seen for long time, and that is provide professional reviews for the shows that are being produced locally, because these theater companies, we're talking about tens of thousands of patrons seeing shows, producing millions of dollars of local revenue. That's pretty neat stuff.
It is neat stuff. And I want to encourage everyone to check out the Culture Buzz, as John describes. Also, make sure you're tracking Art Beacon. These are great resources that we have in this community that we're not always fully aware that we have, that can tell us what's happening, when it's happening, and now how, and the quality with which it's happening to
some extent.
And that
weekly newsletter is it's a resource for you. It has your access point, your website listed there along with Art Beacon. So there's a few select resources that I've done a vetting process, and so it's just a reminder that if you're looking for something to do, some creative mischief to get into, there's your resources.
All right, you cultural adventurers out there who are listening, please take note. Thanks again to John Busbee for his contributions through Culture Buzz, to Justin Mandelbaum and Siobhan Spain for their efforts establishing and sustaining Mainframe Studios, and to my collaborator, Alex Cooney. Also a reminder for those of you hearing this before March 11th, on that date at 6:30 p.m. at Art Terrarium, there will be a kickoff get-together for artists wanting to participate in Art Week, one of our signature events. It's slated for June 19th to 26, 2020 in Des Moines. I'm Pat Bodie. Thanks for catching 900 Views.